General Directors is back in session.
Mr. Chairman, before we get the answer from the AG, I want to remind before this board votes that the practice of law is governed by 4705.07A, and whoever violates 4705.07A is guilty of a first-degree misdemeanor. Do we have an answer from the AAG?
Yes, there's no requirements under the revised code, administrative code, as to what form votes can take. And this board, is my understanding, there's no procedure written in its own policies as to how votes can take, so it's permissible for a board member to pass as long as it's clear that that board member either votes or abstains when the vote is told.
So now where were we?
I
So
would have been
Bob
calling,
said no. Tana said yes.
and then I would be calling Mr. Marchbanks.
Yes.
Could I ask Mr. Boyer to explain his past? Because we want transparency, right? We want the general public to understand everyone else is voting yes or no. Can we have an answer of why you passed?
Okay, let me give a reason here. This is a 7-person board. As you all know, we only have 5 board members on this 7-person board. So if we do not have 4 individuals say yes, nothing will ever pass because we only have 5 board members. So the majority of vote of a 7 board is 4 people. So today we have 5 individuals here. So one person you have to have 4 people say yes. So me being the president, I feel that I can decide a case if there is something that is going to tie or maybe a vote not be approved, then I have that option to do that with a pass.
And I'm going to echo your words again. You want transparency. I want accountability. You understand that if there's been the unauthorized practice of law, you understand that is a first-degree misdemeanor.
I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not sure about the law.
Well, you've got the lawyer right here, Mr. Boyer.
I heard you state that.
Yeah.
I didn't hear our Attorney General state that. So I don't know what has to do with the motion of releasing documents.
We'll get there.
Okay. So we had a vote with Bob Wasco's no. We had a vote with you for yes, and now we are to Jack Marchbanks.
And
Yes.
I heard yes from Mr. Marchbanks.
Yes.
Mr. Chandler
No.
and Mr. Boyer.
No.
The motion fails.
Mr. Chairman, while we're on the topic of the unauthorized practice of law, you may recall that on July 22nd, the Attorney General's Office of Ohio provided us with a privileged memo on the unauthorized practice of law.
I think
So
we're on the request for representation of the AG's
I'm making a
office
motion,
in
Mr.
21
Chairman,
cases.
that you waive the privilege of this memo that's dated July 22nd, 2015 on the unauthorized practice of law. It's a memo that was provided to this board by the Attorney General's office. I'm making a motion to waive the attorney-client privilege on this memo.
So there's a motion on the floor,
You have a second?
and we have a second. Any discussion?
Can I, 1 second? Can you give me the specific date? You said some memo I got correct.
It's
Attorney-client
a
privilege.
memo, it's an email and memo dated July 22nd, 2015 to this entire board. And the subject matter, it says confidential attorney-client privilege communication. And I have made a motion to waive that attorney-client privilege on that memo specifically.
Did you waive some of the documents between your correspondence between yourself and Summer Moses?
Pardon?
Can you waive the documents and the correspondence between you and emails between yourself and our Assistant Attorney General, Summer Moses?
I'd have to ask the AG for an answer to that. I don't know that it's up to me to waive it.
If it's advice sought on behalf of the board, then the privilege belongs to the board.
Because I believe some of the conversations created that memo, and I'm not privy to the conversations that you had, nor does this board have privileged information to the conversations that you had with Summer Moses. Because I know what happens in the meeting, and I don't know what happens before the meeting, after the meeting, or even conversations. I'm not aware of those statements or emails.
Mr. Chairman, why are you being so evasive? It's a
I'm not being evasive. I
It's a
feel that I
simple
need to
motion.
see more
This is
information.
one memo right here, one little memo here.
Right,
That
but
I-
it was all created during a conversation.
It was
and
created
emails.
for the entire board, Mr. Chairman. Why not have transparency?
This is in our discussion part. I was allowed to ask if I could have those conversations and those emails between you and Summer Moses and the conversations that took place that created that piece of document there.
You have to ask the Attorney General's office for that.
Okay. Okay. I know we waived all of our documents to all of our conversations, and, okay. And we have a roll call.
I'm sorry, I don't have a second. I
You
have-
seconded.
Okay. And I have this written as a motion to waive attorney-client privilege on the email memo dated July 22nd, 2015, from the Attorney General's office to the board.
That's correct.
Okay. Mr. Marchbank?
Yes.
Mr. Tanner?
Yes.
Mr. Wasco?
No.
Mr. Boyer?
No.
And Mr. Chandler? No. Motion fails.
And we're on board operations 7.01, conducting board business. You wanna just go to that? Or is that one?
My side.
Let's take a while for it to load. It's taking a while for our board docs to load, must be quite a file.
Oh, do you want me to read it?
I just want to load Mr. Mouse and then.
Is that behind you?
Anybody enough time to read all the documents concerning conducting board business?
My documents won't load.
I would read it.
Mr. Williams, could you give me a hand, please, again?
I think we're all trying to access it, so it could be the Wi-Fi here in the building, but all of us trying to access such a large file. We could have Vanessa read all of it if you'd like.
No, I'd rather be able to see it.
It is behind us as well. If you'd like to read what is behind us and tell me when you're ready for me to move forward.
I had mine loaded from earlier if you want. Someone wants
This
to.
this will work if we can see it up here.
Keep moving.
Ready from forward?
Everybody had a chance to review and read?
Yes. Are you asking for comment?
Just whether there's a motion to adopt it or not to adopt it?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask another question. This is a little confusing to me, and I haven't really had an opportunity to digest this and do my own legal research, and perhaps even consult with our AAG's office on this issue or topic. But if the idea here is to restrict a board member or this board member's fiduciary obligations to this board and the fiduciary obligations to the general public, I don't know that this is productive. And while we're talking about this, I need to know what currently this board's policy is on the preservation and retention of records.
Vanessa can answer that.
There's a record retention schedule that's developed by the Department of Administrative Services. And then there is also an agency-specific record retention schedule that has also been approved through the Department of Administrative Services. So it depends upon the specific document as to what that schedule is and what happens to it after.
Let's talk about emails. What is the record retention policy for the retention of emails from the executive director, or that come to the executive director to or from? What is the record retention policy?
It is 6 months and then they are destroyed.
Okay, I would make a motion that we change that 6-month rule to 2 years, and that all emails.
Mr. Chairman, we're on a whole different
Sir,
topic right now.
You're interrupting me.
Mr. Chairman, I'm asking,
Mr. Wasko?
point of order.
I'm making a motion that we revise the 6-month policy so that all emails to and from the executive director are retained and then archived and sent to the state archives for possible retention.
I think there's state laws concerning that with DAS on retention of records, is there?
The 6-month is a Department of Administrative Services record retention schedule policy.
It's not
Under
ours.
the general record retention policy.
So the state already has a record retention since my emails are with the state. I have all my emails from the beginning of time when I came on board, when I received it, nothing's been deleted.
Mr.
Everything
Boyer,
is
Mr.
there. I'm
Boyer.
talking at this time.
All right, I'm sorry.
Since we're playing that way. But I have not deleted anything. It's been there since I've received the emails. So I've had emails going back almost back to 13, late 12. So all of mine are there. They're still there.
Does your executive director have her emails from last August and September?
I don't question what they have or what you guys do.
Should
I don't
she have?
question what you do when you use your legal.
Should she have retained email records that come to and from her office for more than 6 months?
How long do you keep yours? Or,
I still have mine
okay, you've been on how long now?
since December.
Okay.
So if we want transparency,
I know the emails.
no, I didn't interrupt you now. If we want transparency and I want accountability to the general public, I'd like to see this board adopt a policy that says our executive director is responsible to retain emails that come to and from her office that can then be archived.
What about DAS? If you want to put that in motion, that they retain state documents for 2 years too? Or just this board?
I'm on this board right now, Mr. Board.
How long do you retain your documents on the beauty board? How long is that for? Is that for, I mean, cosmetology board? How long is that?
Well, we haven't had the problems that we've had on the cosmetology board with a retention of emails.
So what's the policy?
I don't know, I'd have to check with the AG's office.
So you'd want to pass a policy for this board, but you
Right.
don't even know what your board policy
This is the funeral board, it's not the cosmetology board. And while we're at it and you open that door, I'd like to pass along to you another email, Mr. Boyer, that was provided by the executive director that's dated August 21st. I'm going to give you a copy.
I think we've seen that in the public record request.
How many members of the media are here?
Mr. Chairman, point of order, there's a motion on the table. We're into something else now. Let's keep this organized. I just requested.
Here's why this is important, Mr. Boyer.
There's a motion on it.
Regarding the unauthorized practice of law, the executive director went outside the board, and by the way, she had a meeting with Mr. Fulkerson and did not retain a copy of the documents, which I think is again a retention issue. I requested those somewhere around April the 11th, and I find it very troubling that the executive director did not retain a copy of the documents that she took to Mr. Fulkerson. When the executive director sought outside counsel, again, she did it without board authority. There was never any public discussion. It was done outside this board's authority. And
Was that the
she
time
sent-
when you
she
asked
sent
her to
an-
go visit the?
she sent an email, Mr. Boyer, to me on August 21st of 2015 that she called my office at 1:55 p.m. in the presence of her staff and left a detailed voice message about this. So I went ahead and ordered my phone records, and there's no call from Ms. Nykamp to my office. And if she's making phone calls or opening emails and writing emails in the presence of staff, what does that say about her accountability? Or is that simply a self-preservation motive? I just want a simple answer. I went ahead and got my phone records. No call from Ms. Nykamp according to this email. That's why I want these records retained. That's why I want record retention so that we can have accountability and responsibility.
Was that part of the discussion on the motion that we had on the floor?
That's all my discussion, Mr. Chairman.
Normally, discussion is kept to the motion, so I'm confused what the motion is now.
Well, let's see, if we had a stenographer and an appropriate record-keeping system, the way we do on the cosmetology board, right now we could ask the court reporter to read back what the motion exactly was. Instead, we have the executive director that's typing up my motions that she may or may not agree with.
I don't see how you can do that with a camera, audio, and video. We talked about this before. We had a stenographer when the AG's office stated that we didn't have enough information in our notes, so we paid $35,000 a year to have a stenographer.
You know what, Mr.
So we
Boyer?
had the stenographer come in and do all of our minutes, type up everything, and then we had a new attorney general come on board. They told us that we had too much information in our minutes. that we were to reduce the minutes. So we took the advice of the Attorney General's office. We no longer had a stenographer. This has been explained to Tommy many times and many occasions. And then we had a new AG's office come in, and they told us that we didn't have enough in our minutes, that the AG's office said they wanted more fluffiness in our minutes of the meeting. And at the time, I believe in the fluffiness, did we have the camera at the time, or are we in the process of purchasing that? But since then, we have purchased the camera, and it actually shows everything that's going on in here, everything that's being said, and everything that's been stated in the meeting. And I know Tommy always stated that when their minutes from the cosmetology board, when it didn't reflect the proper information, what they went back to, they didn't have the stenographer read it back. He explained to me that he went to the audio recordings and they played back the audio recordings to see if it reflected in their minutes what they had stated. They do not have a stenographer, they have an audio. So when we went with board docs, we knew when we were going paperless that we could actually go with board docs. One of the features with board docs was to be able to put a camera in the room and also have audio. When our meetings are over, they're posted online a day later, so anybody can watch the video, they can listen to it, and they can hear exactly what's being stated and what's being said in our meetings. It's pretty difficult. We had the stenographer, we did it, we were told too much information, we didn't use the stenographer, so this is where we are today.
Well, let me again restate my motion, which was seconded by Mr. Marchbanks. I want a motion that there be a retention policy put in place for accountability, that records are retained, all emails are retained to and from the executive director's office.
All records are retained on the hard drive.
Emails too, sir.
I'm just saying,
All
I'm not going to
records.
supersede DAS, so if we need to talk to, bye-bye, thank you. So we cannot supersede what the state does, so,
I'm not sure if that's correct, and I'd be happy to look into that for you, but I won't be giving an answer on that now.
okay.
Well, Mr. Boyer, again, I made a motion, it was seconded. I think that you've rambled enough for quite some time. We don't have an audio to play it back so you can hear yourself.
No, we can stop the camera and go back through everything if you'd like to.
That's all right, I think I've heard it.
No, I think we could do that. I think we've heard quite a bit from you yourself.
Thank you.
Are we on discussion now?
Yeah, we're on discussion.
I have no problem with the records retention policy being longer. I agree, I want everything to be as clear and concise and transparent as possible. What I don't want to do is get the board or anyone else in trouble with DAS, or should we table it until we get an answer from the AG's office?
We need, and we can have a retention policy today that says that the executive director is required to retain all records, including emails coming to and from her. We don't need to have that research, do we?
And you don't even know what's on the cosmetology board record retention, and you've been on that board how long, and you don't know the policy?
We don't have the problems on that
How long
board,
have you been
Mr.
on that
Boyer.
board?
Over 10 years,
I'm saying you don't have that policy, so
over 10 years.
it's,
Can you do it for one employee when you have to do it for?
Oh, and by the way, I was on village council in New Albany for 10 years, and for the last 30 years, I've been on countless boards, and I've never experienced the lack of accountability, the lack of transparency that I've experienced on
that's a
this
false
board.
statement, completely untrue. I've built airports, I've built approaches, I've put in fuel systems, I've built swimming pools, and you were on council. I've applied for grants. Worked with the Department of Transportation, High Department of Transportation. And I have no accountability, that nobody knows what I do, that nobody has access to all the information that I have.
Ms. Nykamp, 'Ms. Nykamp is quoted in the Dispatch newspaper. 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 that she
And
falsely
how did they
accused,
receive
that
that?
she
I know, what I was,
falsely accused this board member. I want accountability and I want responsibility.
all emails have been turned over, but they were, it's amazing the selective picking of emails that were chosen. And the ones that weren't chosen. It was very selective. So to me, somebody only wanted certain information to be released and not other information to be released.
I tried to get you, Mr. Chairman, to release the memo on the unauthorized practice of law here, but you passed.
Everybody received a memo from Susan Walker.
You passed. You want to go back and revisit
There's a lot of
this?
attorney-client privileged information that should be released
Do you want to go
and should be
back
discussed.
and revisit this memo, and maybe change your pass vote to a yes?
I'm not an attorney, and
You agree, Mr. Chairman, that the unauthorized practice of law without a license is a first degree misdemeanor? Would you agree that
I've
you
never
have?
read into that law. I know you stated that you did the same things on the cosmetology board, that you negotiated settlements.
Our
And it's in the minutes that you stated
cosmetology
that.
has contact with pending cases, but they always rely upon the assistance of their AAG. Now, my question to you is, you agree that you have to have a license to practice law, right?
I'm not sure how it works with what goes within state
Well,
boards.
you're a pilot, so do I need a license to fly a plane?
Actually, you can fly on your driver's license.
Do I need a license to fly a plane?
No, you do not.
Hmm, okay.
A sport pilot can fly it on his driver's license. He can't fly at night. He can't carry a passenger.
Okay.
If he's never lost his medical, he
Oh.
can fly on his driver's license.
Okay, well,
So yes, you can fly without a pilot's license.
okay, well, do you need a license to drive a car?
Do you need a license to drive a car?
I don't find it humorous, Mr. Boyer. I find it very serious.
No, do you understand? We all know that we all drive a car. There is
Well,
license.
you do need a license to practice law. And practicing law without a license, if you're convicted, is a first-degree misdemeanor.
If somebody puts themselves out as an attorney, that's the practice of law.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Tannen, I think there's been the motion and the second. I'd like to have that acted on if possible, then move on to this overall policy under consideration. That's okay.
That's fine with me. I don't want somebody sitting there saying that I didn't allow them to have the time, that we didn't have this conversation, that we're not transparent. I should have rapped the gavel a long time ago when he completely got off base. I'm sorry for not rapping the gavel and stopping that from happening. So if we can get back to the motion.
Shall I read the motion again?
Read the motion.
Motion to have a record retention schedule that requires the executive director to retain emails for 2 years and then forward to state archive.
All records, including emails to and from. Including but not limited to emails to and from.
Actually, I don't use my email account. It's just for board docs to get the information, so we knew what was going on in the meeting. But since you have come on the board and all these conversations that you have with individuals from the AG's office, private emails between you and the AG's office, you've been having conversations with people coming before the board, and then having private meetings with those people in the AG's office by phone, I believe. The most recent one that we had a gentleman, Mr. Henderson, who came before this board, and we had filed an injunction against him for having funerals and funeral services, and we did a cease and desist order. And he wasn't a licensed funeral director. He wasn't a licensed embalmer. He was practicing funeral service and embalming, so we did a cease and desist order. But after the newspaper article come in, he reaches out to you, and then you call him.
Yeah, Mr.
And this
Williams.
this is
Mr.
a person that
Williams,
we've had
your camera
before
manager
the board.
And Ms. Nykamp instructed Mr. Henderson to contact my office. And
They just forwarded messages saying that he had contacted. I have people
And-
trying to call me, and you know what I tell
and
them
Mr.
when they call
Henderson
me? I'm
indicated.
talking.
Oh, sorry.
When people call me who have an issue with this board and who have come before this board, and they call me,
Mhm.
and I tell them if they have a discussion with me, I will abstain. If I think I know what they're talking about or what the case is here, I will abstain. I tell them, if you have a conversation with me concerning board business and funeral director and embalming, and I know when this case comes anonymously to this board, and I believe it's you, I will abstain. So I tell every person that tries to contact me, because they didn't get their way with this board, I tell them, I will not speak to you about it. And if you talk anything about this, then I will abstain.
Or pass. In-
Which we found that that was perfectly proper to do. That you bring that up again. And that's not the only time you've brought it up. I feel like we just spend time on this frivolous, this board is not doing its job because we're tied up in frivolous.
Well, if I could quote you, I think your words in the past have been in emails to me that this is a complete waste of time.
No, you used the word complete waste of time. The word complete waste of time, we said since I was doing an internal investigation and because we had forwarded this to the Inspector General, it was a waste of time, or actually, it wasn't the word waste of time, those were your words, waste of time. What was stated in there, we had multiple people doing different investigations. You had your own investigation. The IG was doing an investigation. I was doing an investigation. So the whole thing was multiple groups doing an
You have sent me
investigation on the
emails-
same
You have sent
thing.
me emails, Mr. Boyer, that indicate that if there's been a falsification of public records, that inquiring into that is a waste of time. Sir, I
I
don't
never used the
believe-
word waste of time, that's false.
that's
and
your
not
email
true.
to me.
That's a
It's a waste of
complete,
time.
that's a complete, and the word waste of time
Yeah.
is your words.
No, sir, that's
Your words. It's your words. Waste of time. Those were your words.
No,
I can
that was-
specifically go back and find the email where you stated that. I never said it was a waste of time. We said multiple organizations invest in the same issue was not proper. And from our investigation that we looked at, from the staff and from our emails, nothing was altered from our end. I do not have access. I know when Randy Ludlow had called me, I asked him if he had access to the email of the employee of Columbus Dispatch. He said he did not. So the email